Hello, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to have a look at one of the stupidest claims flurfs and science deniers make. Rockets are fake because they can't work in space. Time to get out the crayons and see if we can dumb this down to their level. Let's start by looking at the claim itself. Rockets can't work in space because A. There is no oxygen in space to allow for the burning of fuel, and B. There is nothing for the rocket to push off of. Ouch! That kind of stupid brings on migraines. Okay, we'll take these one at a time. First, there is no oxygen in space for burning fuel. Let's begin by looking at the types of rockets that are commonly used. Before we look at their differences, let's make sure we understand the basics. All rocket engines produce thrust by accelerating a working fluid, but there are many different ways to produce the acceleration and many different available working fluids. Let's look at some of the various types of rocket engines and how they produce thrust. There are two main types of chemical rocket engines: liquid rockets and solid rockets. In a liquid rocket, the fuel and the oxidizer are stored separately and pumped into the combustion chamber of the nozzle where the burning occurs. In a solid rocket, the fuel and oxidizer are mixed together into a solid propellant, which is packed into a cylinder. The propellant only burns on the surface. So as the propellant burns, a flame front is produced which moves into the propellant. Once the burning starts, it will proceed until all the propellant is consumed. With a liquid rocket, you can stop the thrust by turning off the flow of fuel or oxidizer, but with a solid rocket, you must destroy the casing to stop the engine. It is the fact that liquid or solid rocket fuel burns that flurfs and science deniers reach their intellectual limits. They simply cannot work out how any type of fuel can burn in space. Yet the answer is so simple. Any high school student can figure it out in 30 seconds or less. It's called an oxidizer. An oxidizer is exactly what its name implies. It is a substance that has the ability to oxidize other substances. In the case of a rocket engine, it can provide the oxygen required for combustion to occur, regardless of the presence of oxygen or lack thereof in the outside environment. In other words, space being a vacuum makes no difference at all. The rocket will happily continue burning for as long as there is fuel and oxidizer to do so. As for the second item, the stupid idea that a rocket must have something to push off of in space. Well, once again, the answer is grade school simple. It's called thrust. Thrust is generated by the propulsion system of the rocket through the application of Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In the propulsion system, an engine works on a gas or liquid called a working fluid and accelerates the working fluid through the propulsion system. The reaction to the acceleration of the working fluid produces the thrust force on the engine. The working fluid is expelled from the engine in one direction, and the thrust force is applied to the engine in the opposite direction. It's as simple as that. The direction of the thrust is normally along the longitudinal axis of the rocket through its center of gravity. But on some rockets, the exhaust nozzle and the thrust direction can be rotated. This is called gimbaling. The rocket can then be maneuvered by using the torque about the center of gravity. Flurfs and science deniers have this stupid notion that rocket engines work on the same principles as jet engines. They do not. Jet engines, like turbojets and turbofans, employ axial flow or centrifugal compressors to raise the pressure before combustion and turbines to drive the compression. Modern turbofans, like those on commercial aircraft, use a large low-pressure fan ahead of the compressor section, allowing low-pressure air to bypass the compressor and turbine and mix with the exhaust, increasing the mass of the accelerated air. This system of moving large volumes of air at a slower speed raises efficiency and cuts both fuel consumption and noise. So you can see that jets and rockets are not the same thing, but both rely on Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In the case of rockets in space, the pushing force is produced by the combustion and rapid expansion of exhaust gases, being pushed against the cone-shaped nozzles, providing the directional motion of the craft. Forces are vector quantities, having both a magnitude and a direction. When describing the action of forces, one must account for both the magnitude and the direction. It's just like filling a balloon with air and letting it go. The escaping air is the working fluid, providing the thrust in the single direction, causing the balloon to move in the opposite direction. And there you have it, the simplest breakdown I could muster to slap the stupid out of this moronic claim. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. If so, please remember to subscribe if you haven't done so already. And leave a like and a comment so YouTube will recommend it to others. And always remember, never be afraid to speak your mind. Just think before you do it. I'll see you again in the next one.